So thinking about a career as pastoral worker,
What a fascinating choice.
we're diving deep into this whole world with you today.
Using these RoleCatcher guides as our roadmap.
And it's not just about, understanding the job description.
It's about uncovering what it really feels like to support a community in this way.
And what's fascinating to me?
Is how technology plays into this.
We're used to algorithms driving everything from our shopping carts to our news feeds, but
Yeah.
spiritual support, that's a new frontier.
Okay, so first things first.
The guide actually calls it supporting religious communities, not just pastoral worker.
What's the deal with that?
It's a good reminder that
We're not talking about a one-size-fits-all role here.
think about the difference between a massive church in a city center and a small rural parish.
Totally different vibes, right?
And the guide even mentions mosques and synagogues.
This is about fostering connection across a wide range of faiths and communities.
That makes sense.
Okay, so we've got variety in the setting.
Well, what about the day-to-day work?
It sounds like it takes a special kind of person.
You're not wrong.
The guide doesn't shy away from the emotional demands.
Imagine being there for people during some of their most difficult moments.
Providing comfort, offering guidance, maybe even helping them plan a funeral.
That's not something you can just clock out of at 5 p.m.
Definitely not your average 9 to 5.
But on the flip side, I noticed it lists flexible working hours as a potential perk.
I guess that makes sense.
Sometimes you need to be available when people need you, not just when the clock says so.
Exactly.
It's a career that requires a lot of flexibility and adaptability.
And speaking of adapting, did you see the section on technology?
Apparently, churches are using social media now to connect with their communities.
No way.
I totally missed that.
It's kind of mind-blowing, right?
You think of a pastoral worker, and you picture someone visiting people in their homes, not posting on Instagram,
It's a perfect example.
of how even traditional roles are evolving in the digital age.
Think about it.
How do you reach younger generations?
How do you offer support during a pandemic?
The digital world is part of it now, even for a career so rooted in face-to-face interaction.
Okay, but let's say you're all in on this whole pastoral worker thing.
You're feeling called to it.
How do you actually land a job?
This is where RoleCatcher's interviews guide totally blew my mind.
We have a database of 120,000 interview questions.
120,000.
That's insane.
Right.
Talk about intimidating.
But it makes you realize that you can't just walk in with canned answers and hope for the best.
You have to be ready for anything.
Absolutely.
The guide stresses the importance of showcasing your unique skills and experiences with specific examples.
You can't just say you're empathetic and compassionate.
You're to show it through real-life stories and experiences.
It's like anyone can say they're a people person.
But what does that even mean?
You have to back it up with actual evidence.
Exactly.
And speaking of evidence, have you seen this co-pilot thing they talk about?
Apparently, it uses AI to analyze job descriptions and even gives you feedback on your practice interview video.
Seriously, it's like having a digital coach in your pocket.
You practice, your answers record yourself, and the AI tells you how you're doing.
That's wild.
That's the future of job hunting right there.
Imagine being able to fine-tune your delivery, your body language, everything.
That's with the help of AI.
It could be a game changer, especially for people who get nervous in interviews.
No kidding.
I know I'd be sweating bullets.
Okay, so we've talked about the interview process.
But what about actually finding these jobs?
This is where RoleCatcher's Jobs Guide comes in, right?
It sounds like they've built this whole platform to make the job search less of a headache.
They even have this browser extension
The RoleCatcher capture thing.
that lets you save jobs from anywhere on the web.
It's all about staying organized.
Especially when you're juggling multiple applications, tailoring your CV, and trying to keep track of deadlines. You see a job posting that piques your interest, but you don't have time to apply right then.
Instead of losing that link in the abyss of your browser history, you just hit that capture button and bam.
It's saved to your RoleCatcher dashboard.
That is seriously slick.
No more emailing links to yourself or trying to remember where you saw that perfect opportunity.
Okay, so we've covered the tech side of things.
I'm curious about the actual career path.
Let's say you land the entry-level pastoral worker position.
What happens next?
Well, according to the guide,
You wouldn't necessarily jump into the deep end right away?
you'd start by assisting with ceremonies, providing basic support to community members, maybe helping out with outreach programs.
Think of it as an apprenticeship of sorts.
So you're learning the ropes.
Getting some hands-on experience before taking on more responsibility.
It's not like they just hand you the keys to the chapel and say, good luck.
Exactly.
The guide even gives an example profile of someone at this entry level.
They talk about this person's experience assisting with rituals, providing a listening ear to those in need.
And their desire to continue their education in pastoral care and counseling.
It paints a picture of someone eager to learn and grow within this field.
I like that.
It shows you don't have to have all the answers right away. You just have to be willing to learn and grow.
So what comes after that initial entry-level stage?
The next step up is simply pastoral worker.
Where you take on a more prominent role.
Now you're leading programs, assisting ministers with rites and ceremonies.
And even providing support for people struggling with social or emotional issues.
Wow, that's a pretty big jump in terms of responsibility.
You go from assisting with a youth group to potentially counseling someone through a major life crisis.
It's a demanding role for sure.
But also incredibly rewarding.
The guide emphasizes the importance of continuous learning.
Attending workshops, taking courses, and things like psychology and counseling.
Always expanding your skill set to meet the evolving needs of the community.
It makes sense.
You're dealing with real people, real problems.
You have to stay sharp, keep learning new ways to support them.
So what about those who are in it for the long haul?
What does the career ladder look like for pastoral workers?
Well, after the pastoral worker level,
The guide outlines 2 more steps.
first there's senior pastoral worker,
Yeah.
which sounds pretty self-explanatory.
You're leading a team, developing strategic plans, mentoring junior staff.
But then it gets really interesting. Do tell.
What could be more interesting than being a senior pastoral worker?
The next level is senior pastoral leader.
Ooh, that has a nice ring to it.
Senior pastoral leader.
What do they do?
Are they like the CEO of Compassion?
But seriously, they're the ones setting the overall direction for the pastoral team.
Shaping policies for the entire community, advocating for social justice.
It's a position that requires not only deep spiritual understanding, but also strong leadership skills, political savvy.
The whole package.
Wow, that's quite a trajectory.
You could start by organizing bake sales and end up advocating for major social change.
But let's rewind a bit.
Say you're just starting out thinking about applying for those entry-level roles.
What kind of practical advice does RoleCatcher offer?
They're big on gaining hands-on experience.
Which makes perfect sense.
They recommend volunteering at religious organizations, community centers.
Any place where you can get comfortable interacting with people and providing support within a spiritual context.
It's all about showing genuine interest and building a foundation for the more challenging aspects of the job.
So it's not necessarily about having a fancy degree.
It's about showing up with a genuine desire to serve.
Precisely.
And that brings us to another interesting point the guide brings up.
The variety of job titles you might encounter for this role.
Variety.
I thought we were calling them supporting religious communities now.
Right, but that's more of an overarching term.
When you look at actual job postings, the guide says you might see anything from missionary to chaplain to minister of religion.
It really depends on the specific context and denomination.
So it's important to keep an open mind during the job search and not get too hung up on a specific title.
You have to look beyond the label and understand the core responsibilities.
Absolutely.
Don't get discouraged if you see a title that doesn't perfectly match your expectations.
Read the job description carefully, and if the core responsibilities align with your skills and interests, go for it.
It's like they say.
Don't judge a book by its cover.
Or, in this case, a job by its title.
Okay, so we've established that this is a career path with a lot of heart, a lot of variety, and a surprising amount of technology involved.
But what about the skills and knowledge you need to actually succeed in this field?
What does RoleCatcher have to say about that?
So you're saying
It's not enough to just be a good listener.
you need some serious knowledge to back it up.
You got it.
The guide breaks down the essential skills, and
No surprise here.
philosophy and theology tops the list at a whopping 94%.
You're guiding people on matters of faith.
You've got to know your stuff.
That makes sense.
But it's not all about ancient texts and theological debates, right?
What else did they highlight?
Right behind philosophy and theology.
Is therapy and counseling at 76%.
It really highlights that this role isn't just about spiritual guidance.
You're dealing with real-world problems,
Yeah.
helping people through some incredibly tough times
So you need that balance.
of spiritual wisdom and practical counseling skills.
You're not just quoting scripture.
You're helping people navigate grief, relationship issues, maybe even mental health challenges. It's a big responsibility, and it requires a diverse skill set.
The guide also mentions things like education and training,
Because you're constantly learning and growing in this field.
and even communications and media.
Which speaks to the growing importance of technology in this role.
It's interesting.
Because even with all this talk about AI and algorithms,
Those core human skills,
empathy, communication, that ability to connect with someone on a deeper level,
those are things a machine can't replicate.
at least not yet. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from all of this.
Yes, the way people find and apply for these roles is changing rapidly.
We've got AI analyzing resumes and algorithms matching skills to job descriptions.
But at its heart, this profession is,
and always will be,
about human connection.
It's about offering compassion, guidance, and a sense of belonging to people from all walks of life.
Beautifully said.
It makes you wonder.
With all the data RoleCatcher is gathering,
could they analyze which candidates don't just get hired as pastoral workers,
but actually go on to have the most fulfilling, impactful careers?
Yeah, that
would be some fascinating data to unpack.
Could AI predict which individuals are most likely to thrive in this kind of role?
To make a real difference in people's lives.
It's a question worth pondering.
It really is.
And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of pastoral workers.
Big thanks to RoleCatcher for creating these insightful guides.
They're an incredible resource for anyone even remotely curious about this line of work.
And for those of you already walking this path, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
What resonates with you?
What surprised you?
Head over to our social media and share your experiences.
We read every comment.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep those human connections strong.